Hello, amateurs. Welcome to episode 101 of the Amateur Rugby Podcast, here to help soothe your Sunday morning hangover with some terrific rugby chat about the grassroots of the game. I'm your host, Tim, and I've got another awesome guest for you today. He's just cycled 555 miles for the My Name's Doddy Foundation. He's the head coach of the Edinburgh Accies, and he's an all-round nice guy. Welcome, Iain Berthinussen. Berti, how are you, sir?
Yeah, good, Tim. Good, thanks. Yourself?
Very well, very well. Welcome to the show. And I'd like to kick it off by asking about the cycle ride you've just done. Tell me all about it. What was some of the best parts?
Oh, well, firstly, I didn't cycle the whole 555 miles. We were part of a relay team, thankfully. So we all cycled. We cycled in teams of 3. So there's 9 of us. And we all cycled just under the 200 in total. To be honest, Tim, it was awesome. I was a bit inspired by what you were doing with your big run around all the rugby clubs in Scotland, and having known the Weir family and locally from growing up, and just the opportunity to jump in with some great people from the rugby club that I'm involved in at Edinburgh Accies and help raise a bit of awareness and raise some funds. It was a great opportunity and just an amazing experience. Just meet so many different people, whether that was people involved in rugby or quite a lot of the riders. You know, they had no affiliation to rugby at all. They just wanted to ride and raise money.
It sounds like an incredible experience. How long did the whole event last?
Yeah, so we went down we drove down on the Wednesday in convoy. We had 3 support vehicles. So there's 15 of us, 9 riders, 6 support crew, who were awesome throughout. And we were really lucky. That support crew was headed up by Guy Richardson, 20 plus years in the military, left as a major, and he's also two British Lions tours with logistics. So we were pretty lucky. No stone was left unturned, as you can imagine. So we drove down on a Wednesday, got into Cardiff on the Wednesday night. Unfortunately, we were a bit late though. Bit of an accident on the way down. Not us, but just on the way. So we had a bit of a late tea. Weren't able to register, and we all met at 5:30 at the Principality Stadium on Thursday, and you could just feel the buzz. I think there was close to 200 riders. Almost 300 in total with a support crew. You knew that some people were doing it, and you got to meet some of those people that you knew. You and Andrew was cycling for Glenkinchie, a guy I knew well from back home in Galashiels, playing rugby, and just really good to catch up with a lot of different people, and also a bit starstruck as well. So some pretty awesome people there. Whether it was seeing Hank from GCN, the Global Cycle Network on YouTube, which we all get all our cycling tips from, or Martin Johnson, Rob Wainwright himself, all these guys. It was a pretty good buzz. That 5:30 start was quickly washed away by just seeing the sea of people excited to get going and on the journey of the unknown, really.
It sounds incredible. So tell me about the shifts. So how long was each shift that you rode?
Yeah, so we split it up into sort of 20-mile sections, roughly. So we were never really on the bike for more than an hour and a half, unless the section was really, really steep with a gradient. So it was pretty manageable. In fact, it got to a stage where it was really enjoyable, and I must admit, a week out from it, I was probably missing it, that camaraderie of being together in a team and handing the baton over, so to speak, which was a tracker, and just sort of plodding our way up the country, and then meeting people along the way. I mean, I can remember heading into Wrexham at, before 6 a.m. on the Friday morning. We were going to Wrexham Football Club, which put on an awesome breakfast for us, and this guy just sort of slipped in behind us. And he just wanted to catch our stream into Wrexham, for the last sort of 15 miles or so. He looked pretty broken. And I was having a chat to him, and he was telling me he was trying to do the whole cycle. So you could understand, we're not out of Wales yet, and this guy's, you're thinking to yourself, fair play, mate. You're a better person than me, that's for sure. And I actually caught up with him again in Alnwick for breakfast on the Saturday morning, again at about a similar time, and I got chatting to him, and he'd managed to do 390 miles himself, and then his body just gave up on him, and I just find that incredible that you could do that off the bat, from an amateur cyclist like myself. I was blown away by that, and then he didn't stop. What he did was he joined up with his fellow teammates who were doing it in a relay, and he still completed it, which was just, he could have just packed the bike away and gave up then, but he just kept going and kept going. And there's lots of little stories like that all the way along that just kind of inspired you to keep going. And like I say, we were doing it in a relay, so there was a lot of good fun and a lot of good banter along the way as we had those little changeovers with our teammates and our support crew, and we had walkie-talkies on with a support queue van behind us, so they were chivying us on whenever there were big climbs. Or it was just a great experience, as you can probably tell. I'm still smiling about it now, to be honest.
Yeah, massively so. It sounds absolutely incredible, but this is not the first sort of incredible feat of endurance that you've done. Tell me about what you did last August.
Yeah, so August 2021, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer, and fair play. Went on to my doctors in the NHS, jumped into action, and it took about just over the 20 days for from diagnosis to removal of the tumour, to then onto a recovery stage before chemotherapy. And I was blown away by how quickly they reacted, particularly when we were still nipping in and out of COVID and just coming out of those COVID times. I was pretty keen to try and raise some money, specifically for Cahonas Scotland, who have got a great support network within Scotland, and a fantastic education programme, going around, speaking to sports clubs, youth groups, anything really, just to try and raise awareness about how you can detect testicular cancer and talk about these things. So the first bit of exercise, my wife was used to swim, so I got myself into the pool and I started swimming, and I found, because it was the only thing I was able to really do, I was a bit apprehensive about running again, and getting on the bike. As you can imagine, things had changed slightly, and I really enjoyed that. And then I got on my bike again, and I really enjoyed that. And then I've always enjoyed running and getting out. So I decided to do a sprint triathlon a day for 20 days. I must admit, I'm glad I picked the sprint triathlon, because by the end of it, I was pretty knackered. But again, it was something I just really enjoyed, and I was so lucky. I think out of the 20 days, I ended up having 2 wet days, one really windy day. The weather was fantastic. I live down by the coast in East Lothian. It's very flat, which has its advantages. I think my brother and a couple of the guys in the village that I live in came out and completed a full leg of a sprint triathlon with me to keep me company on the odd weekends, which was great. And they maybe planned a route that was a bit more testing than I would maybe have planned, but no, it was pretty awesome and a good challenge, and managed to raise just under $8,000 for Cahonas, and I'm hoping to do a bit of work with them on the education front, and do a bit of chatting around our local schools in North Edinburgh and stuff, just around that, try and raise that awareness.
Yeah, fantastic. I've got 100 questions probably off the back of what you've just said there. But firstly, and most importantly, what are the key kind of learning points in terms of diagnosis and things like that? I think my audience is mostly male, so let's get some information out there.
What I can do is I can share a link with you, and you can maybe put it into the descriptor. But it's really just regularly checking for any abnormalities. And I think, most men probably do check. But then I think on the flip of that, it's once you have checked and you do think there may be some abnormalities, it's having, the balls, pardon the pun, to go and speak to a doctor. And I think that's probably the biggest thing. Not being shy about going to do that. Worst case scenario, there is something there and it gets checked out, and that's ultimately what we want to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, into the event itself. Tell me about each individual sprint triathlon. Did you do the same course each time, or did you do 20 different ones? I'd love to hear.
No, I tried to mix it up a bit, and I initially thought that I would. I was really lucky. My wife's a teacher, so the first sort of 10, 12 days, she was still on holiday, so I would get up pretty early, 5 o'clock. It was about a 5K run to my local pool. So I would get out, do the 20K cycle, just round about. There's so much cycling in East Lothian, it's so easy. Just pick a route. Generally go 10K out, head turn around, come 10K back, do a bit of a loop, get home, put the trainers on, put the bag on the back, run the 5K to the swimming pool, jump in, do the 750 meter swim, and then get picked up just by the family once they've come to and had their breakfast and whatever else. My kids do get up pretty early, so there was never any issue with me waiting around. One of my probably favourite ones was when my son joined me for sort of the last kilometre of one of the runs. My wife did one of the swims with me, and my son was in the pool swimming along as well. I think he did a grand total of about 20 metres, but probably felt like 750 for him. And then he joined me for sort of like the last 5K of the cycle, which was pretty cool. So I tried to involve them as much as I could as well. I think because it was really good, for specifically my son, because he's 7, my daughter's a bit younger. But to grasp that in his head that I was raising money for something, and to do that, you need to put yourself into some difficult situations. And now it was really good to sort of share a bit of that with him. So.
Yeah, that sounds magic. Now, was there any point during this challenge where you started to question your own sanity? Did it all start breaking down at any point?
You probably know yourself, Tim, from some of the stuff that you've done in the past. I actually probably missed it when I finished. I really enjoyed it, and when you break it down, it sounds like a lot, but actually when you break it down, a 20K cycle is about 45 minutes out on the bike, and when the sun's shining and there's no wind, you're looking at the sea or you're in the hills, then to me it's amazing. It's one of the best things ever, to be out, being active, doing that. And on a 5K run, really, that was the one that I was worried about the most. Old rugby body, back, calves, the stereotypical stuff. And I kept that pace pretty slow until I was running with somebody else. And then inevitably, there's a wee bit of, come on, let's go. But I kept that pace pretty slow. And the swim was actually something that I probably enjoyed the most. Because I had never done a lot of it before, and I was quite interested about how quickly I could improve, but then probably how quickly after it I reached my glass ceiling and realised, geez, these swimmers really are phenomenal athletes. How the hell they do this, two times a day, 7 days a week, it's just incredible. So no, look at. I don't want to sound blasé about it or whatever, but I actually just really enjoyed it, and 100% the weather helped. I love being outdoors anyway, and the distances weren't actually that bad. And then once my wife started going back to work and stuff, I'm pretty lucky. It's about a 20K cycle into work, so I could actually, work around it. In fact, some of the hardest times were the weekends when rugby started. I can remember the longest day was we had Highland who play in Inverness, which are a fantastic club. We've got quite a good link with them. Quite a few of their players, if they come to university in Edinburgh will come and play with us. So we always play each other in pre-season, and it's great. A really, really good forward-thinking club. And so I went to do my swim at 6:30 a.m. in Portobello at the local pool. Drove up to Highland to play the game, but we had a couple of bad injuries, unfortunately, during the game. So inevitably the game, went on further than what I thought. And so my colleague or my forwards coach at the club, Ross, said, "Well, we'll go and do a 5k run here." So we ran along the canal in Inverness and got the 5k run out the way. That was great. And again, the weather was fantastic. You're looking at the mountains on one side, canal, running along the canal. I mean, people on their paddle boards, just things that you don't see that often in Scotland. Maybe a bit more nowadays, and then I got home at about 9:30 at night, and I was thinking, I've still got this cycle to do. Oh, here we go. But it was a wonderful night. It was really calm, and you just got out. But that was a pretty long day with a drive in between. But you make sure you do it. So
yeah, for sure. Well, look, congratulations. It sounds amazing. Now let's talk about the day that we met, which was when I was up in Edinburgh last year. And I'd like to talk about the club itself, because we met at Edinburgh Accies, where you're head coach, and we met kind of outside on the pavement, and then just walked straight in towards the lift and past this incredible wall of like history and all that kind of stuff. And because you see it every day, obviously you just walk straight past it. And I was like, whoa, hang on a second. Let's take a look at this. So tell me about the wall and a bit of the history about the club.
Yeah, well, look, it's one of the oldest rugby clubs in the world. 1857. It hosted the first international England Scotland. There's a lot of history around the club there, and I think sometimes, certainly in the past, we haven't pushed that out, let people know about that maybe as much as we should, unless it's been at a big event or whatever. So that timeline wall to me is really important, because it kind of sets the scene of what I believe as the head coach at Edinburgh is we are about as a club. There is a lot of history, and there's been a lot of ups and downs. But because there's been so much history, there's the house phone going when I say that. Because there's been so much history within the club, sometimes there can be a bit of pressure on our playing group and our coaching group, and we haven't been that successful. And it's just to let guys see that that has evolved over time. Whether that's been the women's game, which sadly isn't there at the moment, but it has been in the past. The men's game, whether that's youth rugby sevens, we've had some real success on that, and also some of the players that the club has produced over the years, whether that's for Scotland, for other international teams. We've got at the moment, we've got a guy who plays in our team who plays for Belgium. So we want to try and just try and make it the most the best amateur rugby club in Edinburgh, the club that people want to come to, the most friendly place that they can possibly be, where they can just be themselves, really. And that's something we've really tried to do. And to make that happen, the rugby club needs to be itself. And sometimes clubs try and push away the history, but I think it's really important that we promote that and make people really aware of what they're representing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's really beautifully done as well. Like, it's a stunning piece. It's almost like a piece of art, and I think most clubs, obviously this is historical thing, the history of most clubs is just the first 15 photo collection on the wall, really, and past captains and things like that. So to have that kind of graphical picture reference of your history, I thought was really wonderful.
Yeah, and it took a fair bit of time. I think there was a lot of emails back and forth on what should be in it, what shouldn't be in it, and there was a lot of moving around the parts, and the people that were involved in creating our clubhouse and getting our stuff going up there. They've done a fantastic job, and the club will always be in debt to them for the amount of work that they've put in, and certainly as coaches, it's made our job a hell of a lot easier over the past, sort of 18 months or so since we've been in there. There we go. Decline. I'm actually going to turn that off. Apologies, Tim.
No problem. No problem.
Me saying as well. So I don't know who that is. Anyway, will not matter. So yeah, I think it's been really, really important, and it's probably helped. Having the history on show. You also go upstairs, and we've got a lot of that in the clubhouse, a lot through the ages. Maybe in our past, in our previous clubhouse, it's maybe been right back at the start, and we've missed ages. I think we've tried to encapsulate everybody, and try and make it a place where we want all of our generations to come back and be involved in the club, whether that's socially, whether that's on a committee, whether that's just coming to watch the game and going away afterwards, or is that volunteering to do something out with. We want it to be that place where people can come down to, and that's a big thing for me in terms of the playing group, the rugby group that off the field that we've got working there, but also as coaches, can we attract coaches so that when the first 15 coaches do move on, there's that succession. It's actually hopefully our second 15 coaches that are going to take over, so they have that understanding of what the rugby club's about.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned it a few times already, which is the new clubhouse. Just kind of describe it for people listening, because I've obviously seen it and it's a wonderful space, but just sort of describe the process that you went through in terms of creating that.
Yeah, so it's a fairly large, movable, open space. It can kind of be split into as big or as small a space as you like. It's got the beauty of having huge windows on both sides, so it's really light, which is great. It's not in front of our pitch, but do you know what? That's something that will probably happen years down the line. But it works, so it doesn't really matter. It's got fantastic sort of facilities in terms of screens for watching rugby. Like the Six Nations, the last 2-3 weeks, there's been a great buzz around the clubhouse in there, and it has taken a long time to get us to there. I think COVID got in the way, and there's been some fantastic, like I say, people that have really driven that forward. Guys like Ron McNabb and Jason Parrott have been huge on the fundraising side, along with countless others. That I could mention to really drive that forward and get us into and away from 8 years of a porter cabin and 2 years of a bowling club and council changing rooms in a park just up the road, which worked, and we kept the club going, but it may not have worked for a huge amount longer.
Yeah, so I didn't know the bit about the previous clubhouses being so kind of ramshackle. So tell me, what has that given your club now? How has it sort of improved the playing staff? How has it improved everything, basically?
I think the big thing is giving us a focal point. It's given us a venue to go back to, which we've had, but it's not been ours. Over the last sort of 8 to 10 years. I was still playing at that point. I joined the club in 2007, and I've been involved in there ever since. I joined as a player, and then started coaching as a player coach, so 7 years ago, and then retired from playing, and I've been coaching there ever since in various different guises. And I think one of the biggest things is that consistency of putting teams out, consistency of players attending training, consistency of players attending events, and I think we're starting to get that as a club. We're consistently putting 3 teams out every Saturday. All 3 teams at the moment are at the top end of their respective leagues, and we hope that continues. But that's taken a lot of time, and I think a lot of that credit goes to the players in terms of how they've probably changed their mindsets from being a bit nomadic to maybe having a place where they can call home, but also then having a bit more respect for that place that they call home, if that makes sense. And I suppose in some ways, it's always different when you're a player. Certainly, when you win or when you lose, when you actually walk into your clubhouse at the end. And the beauty of the new facility is our main change rooms are up the stairs. 10 meters from the clubhouse, walking into it. So the guys have to go through it. And I think there's an element of that within it as well. There's a real drive to succeed and want to be successful on the pitch, but also off the pitch as well.
Was that placement of the change rooms deliberate for that reason?
I would like to say yes, but no. It was very, very well planned out by one of our ex-club captains, actually, Dan Teague, who I think he was captain for about 6 or 7 years, and his building company S1 Developments took on the fit out of the facility free gratis. So it was they did a fantastic job rejigging it all around and to make it work for us. So
yeah, okay. I mean, it's a fantastic space, but let's move on to your playing days, Berti. Now, you were fortunate enough, lucky enough to grow up in one of the hotbeds of rugby worldwide. So tell me about your early days in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a town called Galashiels in the Scottish borders. I think Mr. Happiness's egg shaped Bruce Aitchison was very similar, quite close. He was Stow, not quite Galashiels, just on the outside, but certainly involved at Gala Rugby, and it was fantastic. I started playing rugby when I was in primary school. At my local primary school. At that point in time, I think we had 5 different mini clubs within Galashiels itself, and they were all based around generally the local parks or the local primary schools. And I played for Landline, which the team was coached by a phenomenal guy called Johnny Gray, who sort of taught me all the way through my mini rugby, what was right and what was wrong, and it was a fantastic grounding to be taken through. And I think I wouldn't have changed that at all. A great group of guys and a great coach and a great person who was actually a neighbour as well to be taught by early doors. And then after that, into Galashiels Academy and played rugby there. A mixture between there and club. It kind of worked together. You're basically representing the club and the school at the same time until all the way through until under 18s, where I still look back on our under 18s now, and it was probably one of the most enjoyable 2-3 years probably that I'd ever had in terms of my rugby time, playing with a group of fantastic mates, winning quite a lot, both nationally and within our region, at both 15s and 7s, and still speaking to those guys now. We still have stories and tales to talk about it, and yeah, fantastic. And some of the guys stopped playing after that. Some of the guys played well over 200 games for Gala. Some of the guys went on to play international rugby and play professional rugby, and it was a great mix, and it was a fantastic place to be brought up. And guys like Bill Noble, who for years, although I was a Gala man, was involved in Melrose Rugby and did a fantastic job. He was a fantastic PE teacher. Malcolm Chan Leng, who then went on to be a referee. Just really good guys that gave us a really good grounding in rugby. And then when we went to under 18 year group, we were really lucky that we had a guy called Ian Corcoran and Malky Morrison who took us through for 2 years, and they really drove us on, and just a really enjoyable environment and place and to be around. And I think one of the biggest things that really drove us on when we were coming through under 18s was, although Gala were only in the equivalent of a second division at that point in time, they had players like Nathan Hines, Chris Patterson, Stevie Scott, to name some of the guys that went on to do bigger things. But then John Diels, who's now forwards coach of Scotland, guys like John Amos, Craig Townsend, Gregor's brother, Mikey Dodds, a lot of these guys playing for them, and they had some real success. They won the second division. They won the Scottish Cup that year, and there's a real buzz around the club. It was a fantastic place to be involved in, and certainly within the rugby circles growing up.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. And I've got a similar kind of warm memories of my kind of cult age, 18s, 19s, 20s as well. Just, I think there's something about, you know, your formative years at that point, and then sharing it with a group of like-minded people and being successful as well. And it just feels absolutely incredible. Now, but I've got a question. When I think of Borders rugby coaches, I just immediately think of Jim Telfer. So tell me, are all the coaches like Jim, or is he an exception?
I couldn't possibly comment. I mean, my own experience of seeing Jim really would be living with the Lions or something like that. We certainly had nobody like that. Although I had George Graham at Gala for a little while, and he certainly had a fair bit of a bark on him. No, look, I think we were really lucky. Some of our coaches, like I said, they were teachers, or you know, there were guys that had just come out of the game, or there were people that were managing a lot of people through their businesses. And they were probably ahead of their time, if I'm going to be honest, Tim. They were probably almost in some ways what you'd look for now, in terms of the way, you know, coaching is evolving and going. So I think we were really lucky. That could be down to the fact that, you know, we had a great group of players and a great group of guys. But I think, you know, we were really fortunate with the group of coaches that we had.
Nice, amazing. So you played in the Borders, but you've also played overseas as well. I'd love to hear a bit about that.
Yeah, I had a bit of time. I was lucky. I got involved sort of 1920 with the Borders rugby franchise, which was actually based out of Gala and Etherdale, for a couple of years, and what a great experience that was. But unfortunately, it was at a time when, you know, you weren't allowed to go back and play club rugby. There's been a seesaw in Scotland where pro players have been allowed to go back and play, or they've not been, blah, blah, blah. So I had a period where I just played no rugby. And at 2020 or 2021, it's a fairly grim experience, if I'm going to be honest. And I had a friend who'd played at the Borders who was retiring, a guy called Matty Taylor, who actually has gone on to be a hell of a successful coach, who sort of said to me, look, why don't you come out and play in Australia and Brisbane? And so he put me in contact with a club called South Rugby in Brisbane, and it was one of the best things I could have ever done. I honestly think I may have stopped playing rugby if I had not have gone out there. And I had 2 seasons out there, and it was a fantastic experience of just getting back to what rugby was about. You know, training hard, really enjoying playing. It's fortunate I was at back, so the hard grounds were fantastic, and that was really enjoyable, and it was fast. But then also enjoying the weekends for what they are. You know, with your teammates. You know, with guys from the top team to the third team to, you know, the guys that played on a Friday night on the fifth team. It just really reinvigorated me for, you know, to continue and keep playing and enjoying my rugby. It was a fantastic experience. That you know, we weren't massively successful, but there were opportunities out there where they did allow, you know, top players to play down, and the opportunity to play, you know, like Steve Keff, who played a lot in my first year there. He wasn't in with the Reds quite a lot. Chris Latham played a little bit for one of the teams we played against. Ben Gollins actually played out for Sunnybank at that period. I think he still lives out that, or has lived out in Australia for a while. So there's some fantastic people around, and it was just great fun. Just a great environment. That Australian attitude of, you know, win and the desire to win and be better is just a phenomenal attitude to have.
Yeah, I think it's a big reason for a lot of their sort of historical sporting success, isn't it? That kind of Aussie grit and determination. Now, you mentioned there about the sort of balance of the Scottish game between sort of professionals and the amateur ranks, and how it sometimes hasn't been well balanced. how well balanced do you think it is at the moment, with the Super 6 being fairly well embedded now in between the pro and amateur games?
Yeah, I think we're finding our feet with it, if I'm going to be honest. We're pretty involved in that as a Premiership club at Edinburgh Accies, and I think what we've tried to do is we've tried to, like I said earlier, be that club that people that maybe those older players or those mid to late 20 players that's maybe passed them by, but they're still fantastic rugby players, and they're in Edinburgh, that we're the place that we want them to come to, but also I think we've got a duty and a right to promote our own youth players, and we want to push guys into that Super Six, and whether people agree with it or not, it's there, and it's the next step, and that's where we are on the ladder. And I firmly believe that we need to push and be active in pushing our best young players into that environment, if that's what they choose to and want to choose to do. Not all of them do, but that is the pathway for them now to head into Scotland 20s, or whether that be in a pro team in the UK somewhere. That is where they're going to get seen and be given that opportunity.
And I know players getting the amount of game time they need, because I know in sometimes criticism of the Premiership academies is the players aren't playing enough. So is that an issue in Scotland or no?
I think if you look at it, certainly from my perspective at Clubland, we've used 52 players this season so far in our first team, which is great, because that shows we've got really good depth, and that's probably why all three of our teams are performing. Super 6 wise, I've not been on the ground with it. I've not been involved in a franchise or anything, so it'd be hard to say. I think one of the hardest things for them, I think, is they always just play against each other. It would be great if they had an opportunity to probably play out with, whether that be cross-border, with one of the other nations in the UK. I think that would be a fantastic opportunity if that was able to happen. But from my perspective, Edinburgh Accies, if there's players that want to move into it, then we've got to make that happen. And then also in the hope that if it doesn't succeed for them, then we're the place that they want to come back to, because they know they're going to get a crack at the whip. And we've had several players head into Super 6 and they've gone really well and really enjoyed it, which is great.
Yeah, fantastic. So just on that theme of youth development, tell me a little bit about your day job and what you're doing there in Edinburgh.
Yeah, so I work with Bats Rugby, which is a youth team or a youth organisation, for rugby group for Broughton Rugby Club, Edinburgh Accies Rugby Club, and Trinity Accies Rugby Club in the North Edinburgh area. And it is ultimately geared around trying to make the senior rugby clubs as sustainable as possible with players. And we've been around since 2004. So it's a fairly young club in terms of years. And we do a lot of work within the state schools in North Edinburgh, and also some of our independent schools as well, specifically Edinburgh Academy, as that is historically our linked FP club, or FP school, sorry. And in terms of where we are with it, we've got state school teams playing, which is great, and we just want to try, where possible, keep as many players in the game, and whether that be playing, and hopefully that's playing for one of the three senior clubs, but if not, then how can we assist in helping those guys play, or girls play, hopefully over time, wherever they're going, whether that's university, whether that's to a job elsewhere, or wherever they're going, or whether that's refereeing, or whether that's actually maybe they've fallen out with rugby, but maybe they might turn their hand to media or video, video and games, and doing analysis, and just trying to look at very different things. We've got sort of three strands to Bats. We've got our schools programme. So there's myself and two others that work, Ross Young and Fraser McCaslin, who do a fantastic job. Fraser heads up our primary programme, and Ross heads up our secondary and our club programme. I look more at the community side of things, based around our over 50s program, fundraising, etc., things like that. And we work really well together, and it's just really about driving that in the North Edinburgh, and just trying to get the message about what we do and try and bring that mix of people together, the different demographic that we have in North Edinburgh, which is certainly there, for sure.
So in terms of the coaching that you do, just tell me a little bit about what your focus is in terms of the coaching to try and encourage people to stay in the game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the number one thing is we want all our kids to enjoy it as much as possible. If they're not going to enjoy it, then they're not going to come along. And we need them to play as much as possible as well, whether that be within the schools programs and schools that we've got up and running, or whether that is laterally in the year, specifically at this time, whether that's with our club program through BATS. We try and split our year so that September to December, there's a real push and a drive to get schools rugby going. And we will not play many games as a club. But then once we get to January onwards, we look to try and transition to playing a little bit more as a club and bringing those sort of different communities together and groups together and players together, and to get them going. And then I suppose we've kind of got split into two. So we work up to about 15-year-olds, developing the player. So developing, the player, that's what we call it, our environment within there. And then as we head into under 16s, under 18s, it's maybe looking a bit more of the specifics around, well, what is that player going to do? And it's very individual based. Have they got the potential to go on and play Scotland 18, Scotland under 20s? They've got that small window where they've got an opportunity, or are they going to be the bedrock of one of our 3 community senior clubs that are going to play there for hopefully their whole career? And that's where that's when we start to look at the specifics around where we would look to send guys into what club, and how we'll try and get them embedded in what's going on, whether they're going to university or not. We feel that's really important, because even if they are going away to university, the quicker we can get them involved in one of those clubs, then the quicker they have an affiliation to a club, and the quicker they have somewhere that they'll always hopefully come back to. And that's, I suppose, really our main aim. We always want our players, no matter where they go, whether they go and play professional rugby, Super Six, university down south, abroad, that hopefully they'll always have a place to come back to in their rugby circles when they come back to Edinburgh.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Now, in contrast to that, well, it may not be a contrast. Tell me a little bit about your senior coaching that you do at the club.
Yeah, I suppose that's evolved over time, as it always has. And I think I initially started as a player defence coach. It's quite an interesting story, actually. Roddy Grant was our defence coach at the time I was still playing. He'd left to take up a coaching role in Rugby. And I sort of said to our head coach at the time, "Oh, look, I'd like to play our coach. Quite like to do a bit of the defence stuff, blah, blah." And Bob Eason, who was our director of rugby at the time at the club, was pretty keen for that to happen. So, and I can remember we were playing against Watsonians at Myerside, and bearing in mind I was playing and I was defence coach, and I was on the bench, and it was quite a close game till half time. And I came off the bench at half time to play, and we conceded 50 points. So my boots went in the bin straight away. I thought to myself, you got to practice what you preach here. I think it was time to, and that was the kind of final nail in the coffin for me with playing. I think if you want to coach, then maybe just do one. Don't try and do both, because I clearly wasn't doing that effectively enough. So the boots went in the bin, and I've kind of concentrated on coaching ever since. Mainly I look at defence, and I've now been head coach up there for, I think, 3 seasons, but it would really only be 2 COVID season, maybe 2.5, and through that period. And I've got a fantastic group of coaches, Ross Young, who coaches our forwards, and Chris Martin, who coaches our attack. And we really want short, sharp, intense, game-based training as much as possible. We've found that is what works for our players. There are elements, when we need to break away from that and get that going, but we try and keep those to as short of chunks as possible. And ultimately, we've found by doing that, our players have the most amount of fun, but they probably learn the most as well, because we're putting them in those challenging situations as much as we possibly can within the time frame that we've got with them through the week. And that's ultimately, what we want to do. I think something that's really important for us as well is the person. Quite a lot of times in the past, we've maybe looked at the rugby player and how good the rugby player is, but I think as a coaching group, we probably tend to look more at the person, and then we know that we can develop the rugby out with that. And that's a really important thing to us as a club as a whole. We want good people involved in our rugby programme.
So how do you do that in terms of developing the person? Because I would certainly say I was the same when I was coaching. I was all about the rugby, and I probably didn't pay enough attention to the individual personalities. So is that a really conscious thing that you deliberately set out to do, or does it just happen organically now?
Look, I think it's probably something that's grown over time, just over different behaviours and different people that we've had involved, and different coaches have different ways of doing things. As everyone involved in rugby, you're really lucky that you get touched by so many different coaches over such a long period of time, and it's the little nuggets, I suppose, that you take, and then how you put your own slant on it. But I think ultimately it's probably based on our behaviours as coaches, first and foremost. So, we've got to behave and got to have the right manner about us. We've got to be as open and honest as we possibly can. Lots of good conversations. Try and do that as much as possible via face-to-face or worst case phone call, not WhatsApp and not messages and whatever. We try and do it as much as we possibly can. And on the flip of that, we expect that from our players as well, no matter how hard those conversations are to have. And I think that's probably something that's evolved over time as a young group of coaches that we've learned a lot from, but you actually end up taking a lot from as well, and your confidence grows in having those conversations over time. But I would say most of it, and the majority of it, is about how we behave as individuals. Are we true to ourselves? Are we true to our values and what we do? It's all very well and good having a value. You walk into many rugby clubs and you have a values page on a wall. That was one of the first things we set out as coaches when we took over the program, was that we'll take those posters off the wall, because really, unless you're living them and actually breathing them, then they mean nothing. You can have as much or as little as you want written on a wall, but it's really, to me, how you act as a person.
Yeah, what a good way to finish this part of the conversation. So we'll move on to the stash questions now, Berti. So what's your favourite bit of stash that you've ever received?
Oh, favourite bit of stash I've ever received. I've probably still got it, actually. I've never worn it, and it was one of the best things, I thought. And it's when I played in Australia at the club. Only the top team got given a jersey and taken away to play and wash in through the week. But every other team, and it was the opposite colours to the whole club, but every player in the club got given a jersey with their number on it. So I think my number was I was member 158 or something. So I had 158 on my back, and I had this white top. And if you weren't selected in the Premiership team, the top team, then you would wear your club jersey, your own jersey with your number on it, to play. So everybody was the same below, and there was a bit of a prestige thing, and I quite liked that behind it. And I've still got that wrapped upstairs in my attic, actually, with various other tops that I've never actually put it on. But it's a fantastic, just good memories, and I really liked the way that there was that drive to get that top that you didn't have to wash for the following Saturday.
Yeah, what a great tradition as well, and it's individual but club based as well. I like that. Now, what's your favourite kit of all time? So this can be any team from any era.
My favourite kit of all time. Probably one of the kits I enjoyed wearing the most would have been. I'll probably go twofold on this. I'll probably go favourite kit I'd like to wear, or favourite kit I liked wearing when I was younger. But twofold. My favourite kit I ever played in was probably it was probably at the time when we first ever went from, and I was still in that era when we went from baggy tops to slightly tighter tops, not too tight, thankfully. And it was our first set of 7 strips when I first stepped up to senior rugby at Gala, and we had a really good time and quite a bit of success. But I think as well that change in strip dynamic and everything, it also made you feel quite good. And it was light and coloured, so when it was sunny, you didn't get too hot. Yeah, totally. I think there's a lot around that, and it was a fantastic top, but also probably geared around the experience that we all had as a group together. Going around playing in all the Border Sevens tournaments, either getting to semi-finals, finals, or winning it, but then having a great time on the Saturday night, and then either doing it again on the Sunday or doing it again the following week, and just really enjoying each other's company. So it's probably there. And then growing up, I was given an Otago Canterbury with spates on it, old cotton rugby top from my granny, who'd been on a trip down that way, and I used to never take it off. And I loved wearing it. The 3 Kiwis sign, and you just got that obsession with a team, not having a clue where they were from, or the fact there's so many close links to Scotland and Edinburgh and wherever else from that Otago region. But yeah, that was probably my favourite bit of kit I used to like wearing when I was growing up. Don't think I've ever had it off.
Oh, that's a great story. I love that one too. Now, what about awful kits? Is there anything that's terrible out there at the moment that you'd like to see burnt?
Well, I suppose you can never go past. I wish Scotland had never had that orange top that they created. You can never go past that burnt orange top out there or whatever. To be honest, probably I think that some of the worst things you can get given or wear at the present time are probably those bin bag so-called waterproof that aren't even showered proof tops that you get given by your rugby club or whatever. That'll keep you nice and dry. That'll be okay. Well, it might keep you dry on the outside, but it certainly doesn't keep you dry on the inside. So those sort of useless sort of bits of kit that you get given, that are meant to do a job but never actually really do the job they're meant to.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I like that. Very original. Now then, as we bring this to a close, Berti, is there anything else you'd like to say or any closing thoughts at all?
No, Tim, I just think it's been great to sit down and have a good chat. It's been a while since we last met in Edinburgh. And like I say, I think some of the stuff I've been doing myself has probably been inspired by some of the stuff I've read and looked at what you've been doing, and what others have been doing. And I just love sitting down and chatting rugby, youth rugby, adult rugby, just learning from different people. And the more that we can do that as a group, as people, and specifically from different backgrounds, I think the better. Sometimes people are reluctant to sit down and chat and give away, in case they might give away any secrets or whatever. But rugby is a pretty simple game. Most teams play in the same way. It's just some teams are more effective than others, and it's always good to sit down and just chew the cud.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree. And thank you very much for your time. Now, if people want to get a hold of you specifically, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, well, personally, just on my handle on Instagram and Twitter, at Iain Berti, and then I've also, in terms of Edinburgh Accies, if you want to get in touch with them and learn a bit more about them, it'd be at Edinburgh Accies, and again, that's the same on their Instagram and Twitter accounts, and they're there. And then anything youth rugby wise in North Edinburgh specifically, or if anybody just wants to chat from wherever, at Edinburgh Bats on Twitter and Instagram, drop us a message, and we'd love to just sit down and have a chat.
Great stuff, mate. Everything, people listening at home, everything we've mentioned will be linked up in the show notes, which you can find in one place at the amateurrugbypodcast.com. So, Berti, finally, just thank you so much for your time today. It's been a real pleasure chatting to you.
No, cheers, Tim. Thanks for your time. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Okay, there he goes. Berti, what a superstar. Just inspiration with all those feats of athleticism going on and just a life in rugby as well. And interesting to hear that, you know, almost lost to the game just because of not being played at a certain period of time. So a real big learning point there. Now, what did you think of last week's pod with Bill Folds from Falkirk RFC? I really loved chatting to Bill, but I'd love to hear your thoughts too. You can contact me, hello@amateurrugbypodcast.com. And join me again next week when I haven't got a guest for next week yet. So get in touch. If you know somebody that you think would be great to have on the pod, or if you'd like to be on as well, then please feel free to get in touch by email, hello@amateurrugbypodcast.com. Now, if you've enjoyed this podcast, you can rate and review on your podcast player, like, share, retweet, all that jazz. But what I'd really like is if you mention it to someone in person the next time you're down your local rugby club. But until then, get out and play.